After moving to Hong Kong, Ip Man borrowed a friend's place to teach Wing Chun martial arts. But until the 8th day he stayed there, not a single student had registered. In the morning, Ip Man helps his neighbor to dry the laundry. At the same time, a young man came holding a Wing Chun poster named Liang. Ip Man thinks that Liang came there to register, when Ip Man explains what Wing Chun is. Liang instead challenges him to a duel and Liang says he will pay if he loses. Smiling, Ip Man accepts Liang's challenge.
Wing Chun, Ip Man.
Calmly and easily Ip Man was able to defeat him. But when Ip Man collects the promised money, Liang rushes off. In the afternoon, Liang came back with 3 friends to beat Ip Man. Ip Man tells them to leave if they don't want to learn Kung Fu, but they all still want to invite Ip Man to a duel. After defeating them all and wanting to hurry away, the 4 young men knelt down and wanted to study with Ip Man. Smiling again, Ip Man said, "Please pay the registration fee first." The next morning, Ip Man started training them and day by day his students grew. Until one afternoon, when Liang put a poster of Wing Chun on the wall, a group of people from Hong College came to provoke him. Liang accepted their challenge. Initially the match was one-on-one, but when Liang was able to beat him, 3 other people immediately ganged up on Liang. At the training ground, Ip Man is visited by a group of people who ask Ip Man to come to the fish market to bring ransom, because Liang had beaten their brother. Arriving at the fish market, they immediately freed Liang. With his hands still tied, Liang explained everything to Ip Man. After hearing Liang's explanation, Ip Man did not want to pay the ransom, and finally a fight scene occurred. Because surrounded by many people, Ip Man was cornered and decided to find a way to escape. From the opposite direction Jin came with his friends, and invited Ip Man to go, but Ip Man was again blocked by a group of people led Teacher Hong. Ip Man introduces himself and explains what really happened. Teacher Hong is angry that Ip Man's college doesn't have a permit yet. With an annoyed tone, Teacher Hong tells Ip Man that he must accept the challenge of all Kung Fu teachers, before opening the college. That night, Ip Man's wife suggested that he just give up being a Kung Fu teacher, because his wife didn't want to worry anymore. But Ip Man persisted and reassured his wife. The next morning the Kung Fu masters gathered. And there is a round table that will be used as a battle stage. Not long after, Ip Man came and introduced himself to the other Kung Fu masters. There, Teacher Hong explained that Ip Man should not leave the table, before the incense that was lit was finished. Ip Man immediately went up to the table and was greeted by a Kung Fu teacher who had a mantis stance. Ip Man was easily able to cover all attacks, until finally he kicked the teacher out of the table. Then go up the second teacher. Ip Man is still easily able to beat the teacher. Until finally Teacher Hong stepped up, and presented a very exciting battle, that made everyone who watched it feel amazed. Both of them had the same fast fist technique, until finally the fight ended when the table was split in 2 and they both stayed on the table until the incense was gone. As a result, Ip Man is allowed to open a college on the condition that he pays a monthly deposit to Teacher Hong just like any other Kung Fu school. Hearing that, Ip Man insists that he will serve anyone to fight, but he won't be willing to pay a dime for Teacher Hong's personal gain. One day, there was another brawl between Ip Man's students and Teacher Hong's students, and it made Ip Man go to Teacher Hong to protest the actions taken by Teacher Hong's students. Teacher Hong reasoned that there was a Kung Fu school in Hong Kong, thanks to his services being close to foreign party. Then Teacher Hong challenged to a duel again. But while he was dueling, suddenly Teacher Hong's son passed by. Fortunately Ip Man managed to grab it and at the same time Teacher Hong's wife and other children came to invite Teacher Hong to eat. Ip Man hands over Teacher Hong's son and rushes for permission to go home. The next morning, while Ip Man was teaching, Teacher Hong came and invited Ip Man to watch a Western boxing match. Ip Man accepted the invitation, and from that moment, their relationship got better. Long story short, in the evening the match started with Teacher Hong's students as the opening act. Teacher Hong also told Ip Man to prepare his students to perform on stage. On the other hand, Twister, the defending champion, was also present at the opening ceremony, disparaging and saying that Kung Fu martial arts is nothing more than dancing. Then Twister goes on stage to provoke them. Twister beats them all and says that Kung Fu martial arts is nothing. Suddenly the teachers did not accept, and the boxing ring into chaos. Teacher Hong goes up to the ring to demand Twister apologize, but Twister doesn't want to apologize before Teacher Hong is able to beat him. In anger, Teacher Hong immediately accepts the challenge. At first, Teacher Hong was able to control the game, until when his asthma flared up, Twister was able to turn things around. In the third round, Ip Man suggests to Master Hong to give up, but Teacher Hong says if he will be silent if he is insulted, but if Chinese Kung Fu is insulted, then he will not stay silent. In the third round, Teacher Hong's asthma got worse, which made him have to be beaten up, until finally Teacher Hong had to fall in the ring. A few days later, Ip Man attends Teacher Hong's funeral service and pays his last respects. With teary eyes, Ip Man says that to date Teacher Hong is the most respected Kung Fu master. The next day, Twister and his colleagues held a press conference. They did not accept being named the cause of Teacher Hong's death. They said Teacher Hong's death was caused because Hong was a weak teacher. A few moments later, suddenly Ip Man came there and said that he did not accept that Chinese Kung Fu was underestimated, while challenging Twister to a match against him. Long story short, the long-awaited day arrived. And all the residents were very enthusiastic to watch the boxing event. At the beginning of the match, Ip Man looks very overwhelmed with the power and speed of Twister. Then in the second round, Ip Man tried to launch his 1,000 punches to various points of Twister's body, and was able to dominate the game in the second round. But when the bell stopped ringing, Twister deliberately hit Ip Man to fall. Suddenly the audience was angry. Well, seeing Twister being overwhelmed, the organizers negotiated with the judges, and as a result in the third round Ip Man was not allowed to kick the opponent. If Ip Man violated, then Twister would be declared the winner. In the third round, Ip Man was beaten so badly that he was unconscious for a few seconds, but there he was reminded of Teacher Hong's words and tried to get up again. This time Ip Man targets Twister's head and beats him in the face. Ip Man was declared victorious, and the residents cheered for the victory. Then when Ip Man was asked to give a welcoming speech, he said that it's not about which is greater between Chinese Kung Fu or Western boxing, but more towards respect, and he hopes that in the future no one will despise each other. Hear Ip Man's words. He also received applause from the foreign audience. After the match, Ip Man rushed to meet his wife who had just given birth to their second child. And the film closes with the presence of a boy who wants to practice Wing Chun with Ip Man. Smiling Ip Man asked what the boy's name was, and the boy answered, "My name, Bruce Lee." Then Ip Man asked the boy to come back when he grew up. Thank you for those of you who have watched to the end. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. See you in the next video.